All right, my friends, so far we have learned the basics of Redux, and right now, let's try adding it to our other React router project. So to do that, we will first need to install two packages into the project. So let's go into the correct directory over here, React router. And the first package we'll need to install is Redux. Now we also need to install a package called React Redux. So Redux is just a library that we use to create the store, much like we did in the past few lectures in CodePen. And React Redux is a library which helps us to connect our Redux store to our React application. So it's going to be the thing that allows us to connect our components to the central store of data and interact with it. So it's like a layer of glue between the two, right? Our React app and the Redux store. So let's install both of these first of all. Install Redux, I will say, npm install Redux. And for the React Redux, I'll just say React-Redux, just like so. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can go ahead and create our store. Now, a good place to do this is inside the index.js file over here, because this is where we start our React app, and it's where we will render it to the DOM. All right, so first of all, we'll need to create a Redux store. And to do that, we will import that thing right here from the Redux library. I'll say import create store, and we will call it create store and import it from Redux. And just like we did in CodePen. Okay, so let's create the store. I will say const and then call store and set it equal to create store and invoke that function. Now remember that we have to pass our reducer into this function right here, so actually we're going to do that in a minute. But right now, we have created our store, but how does React interact with that store? And in fact, how do we associate this store with our React application? Okay, so to do that, we use the other package that we installed, React Redux. And to use it, first we have to import something from that package called the provider. So let's import that. So I will say import provider, and it's going to be from React Redux. Okay, so this provider right here, this is a component which is going to wrap this app component. Then we're going to pass our store into that provider, and that's going to provide store to our application. So we're going to pass our store as props to the provider so that the store can interact with our application. So let's do that with the provider. So I will say provider and wrap the app with provider like so. And after then, we'll pass the store as a property to the provider. I will say store equals to the store, which we just created. Okay, so now we're passing our store into our application. Now remember, the next step is we need to create a reducer to put into this store. That's the thing that interacts with the store. Okay, so let's create that first of all. And I'm going to create a new folder inside the source folder, and this is going to be called reducers. Now, the reason I'm creating a reducers folder is that when your application gets bigger, you're going to have way more than just one reducer. We had just the one reducer in the past tutorials, but that was just super simple. As you get more components and add more data, you might want to create separate reducers for each individual part. Okay? And at the end, you're going to combine those reducers into one single reducer. I'll show you that later. Then you're going to pass that single one into this store. But we'll do some of those in the next and upcoming videos. But right now, we're just going to have one root reducer. And this is the reducer that we pass in here. Now, the root reducer is what I like to call it, the root reducer. Anyway, let's create a new file here, and we'll call it rootreducer.js. Okay, so inside of here, let's create that reducer function. I will say const root reducer, and this is going to be a functional component. So remember, inside the reducer, we take the state, and we also take an action. Now, inside the function, we'll just return the state. We don't want to do any kind of interaction with the state just yet. We'll just return it and do nothing. And remember, the first time this function runs, the state has not yet been defined. So that means we just need to give it a default value. And to do that, we'll create an initial state. I will say const initial state and set that to equals to an object. And inside here, I will just say cards. And for the moment, this is going to be an empty array. Then the state right here is going to be equal to initial state. So the first time this function runs and the store is being set up, we'll pass the initial state to be the state as the default value. And then we're returning that state. All right, so now to begin with, the state on that store is going to be the initial state. But you already know that because we've done that. Yes, you do remember. So now what we need to do is export this route reducer. And I will say exports default route reducer like so. Okay. Let's save and go back to the index.js file. Now we need to import the reducer over here, and then we can pass it into the create store. So I'll say import, and then when we want the root reducer from / to say inside the current directory, then into the reducers folder, then we want the route reducer file. And now we can pass this route reducer to the create store function like so. So now we've associated the reducer and the store. Okay, so then we're passing store into the provider tag, which is wrapping our app tag over here. And now we're providing access to the store into our React application. Okay, so we've done all of the setup steps for Redux. So in the next video, we're going to figure out how to connect a single component to the store and access the data in Redux store. So we're going to pause right here, and when we come back, we'll do that in the next section.